Good morning, students. Today we are taking the second chapter of the first book, Hornbill, for class 11th. The name of the chapter is We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together. This chapter was written by Gordon Cook and Alan Cost. A brief introduction of the chapter. The Europeans, you must admit, are enterprising and adventure loving. These very qualities enabled them to sail around the world, discover new routes and new lands, and ultimate colonize them. A few countries ruled over nearly half of the world, closeness to sea, and then better experience of tempest or storms made them strong enough to challenge death. This lesson recounts the story of a businessman, his wife, and two little children. For 16 years, the man prepared himself for the round the world voyage. He built a big boat and undertook a risky expedition. He sailed smoothly up to the tip of South Africa, but as he moved eastward, he faced gales. He hired two helpers to tackle the world's roughest sea, the Southern Indian Ocean. He set out in July 1976. On January 2, he faced the huge waves and fought for survival against a deadly sea. He was badly wounded, so was the wave walker, his boat, which got damaged. But he sailed on and on. He finally set his foot on a small island. His children also were not afraid to die, provided they all were together. So that was the brief introduction. Now let's start the summary of the chapter. It was in July 1976 that the narrator, along with his wife Mary, son Jonathan, and daughter Suzanne, set sail from Plymouth, England, to sail around the world. The son was just 6 years old, while the daughter was 7. The narrator was a 37 years old businessman, but he dreamt like an explorer. He wanted to repeat the performance of Captain James Cook made 200 years earlier. For 16 years, he had been improving his seafaring skills in British water. He invested all his savings on titling and testing out a boat called Wave Walker. It was 23 meters long and 30 tons in weight, with a wooden lower part. They had to cover more than 1 lakh kilometer distance in 3 years. The first leg of their voyage up to Cape Town, South Africa, passed pleasantly. Before heading for the east, the narrator hired two crewmen, an American named Larry Wiesel and a Swiss named Herb Silger. For their help, he knew that the southern Indian Ocean was very rough, stormy, and dangerous. As they left Cape Town, they began to face strong winds which kept blowing for a few weeks. But the gales did not frighten him so much as the size of the waves, which were up to the 15 meter, almost touching the mainmast. On December 25, the boat was 3,500 kilometers east to Cape Town. In spite of foul weather, they celebrated Christmas. They hoped still that the weather would change, and it did change, but for the worse. On January 2nd morning, the waves rose very high. They were sailing slowly. The ship rose to the top of each wave as they hit it. The wind screamed. To slow the boat down, they dropped the storm sail and put a heavy rope in a loop across the back part of the boat. They equipped themselves with lifelines, oilskins, and life jackets. Then they waited for the greater danger ahead. The first sign of the approaching disaster came with an evil silence. The wind dropped and the sky became dark. With a deafening roar, a cloud like a thing hit the ship. It was in fact a strong and high wave. The death seemed quite a hand. The roar increased to thunder. The back part of the boat moved up. An explosion shook the platform. A wave broke over the ship and the narrator's head hit against the wheel. He laughed as if he was being swallowed by the waves. But he did not lose hope and patience. The boat was almost turning over, the mast and the poles lying flat. The narrator grabbed the rails. He was tossed around the deck like a rag doll. His chest bones cracked, his teeth were broken, and his mouth was filled with blood. But he hung on to the wheel. There was water all over. It had flown below, but there was no way to examine the exact position. Suddenly, the lid over the opening on the deck was thrown open. Mary screamed that the lower part of the ship was full of water. She was told to take the wheel. The narrator went down to check on the other members. The two crewmen, Larry and Hugh, were made trying to pump out the water. The sideboard of the ship had plugged inward. Clothes, chart, cookery, everything was floating in the like the toys. He moved towards the children's cabin and found them safe on the upper berth. But Stu had a bump on. The narrator found the hammer, screw, and the canvas and tried to repair the ship. He spread canvas across the holes. Some water now flowed towards the sides instead of below. More problems arose when the hand pumps were blocked up with the debris. The electric pump went out of order. The water level rose dangerously. Back on the deck, the narrator found two spare hand pumps also thrown overboard. Then he thought of another electric pump in the chart room. He connected it to the out pump and it worked. The night was bitterly cold. They sent out distress radio signals asking for help. The little girl's head was swollen and she got back with black eyes due to her injury. She also had a deep cut on her arms, but she did not complain because she did not want to cause worry to her father. By January 3 morning, the situation was under control. The narrator and the other members were in the position to take rest in rotation. They had survived for 15 hours since the wave hit, but the boat was badly damaged. It was not likely to take them safely to Australia. The narrator checked the charts and found two small islands. Ile Amsterdam was a French scientific base. Their only hope was now to reach somehow at any of the islands, so they had to headed for those islands. They ate some beef and biscuits, the first food in almost 2 days. At 4 p.m., black clouds began to build up again. The weather remained hot throughout the night. On January 5 morning, the narrator went to comfort the children. His son John asked if they were going to die. He added that they were not afraid of die if they stay together, all four of them. The evening, Mary and the narrator felt that the end was very near, but the boat mate rode on out to the storm. By the morning of January 6th, the wind ceased. He calculated their position while he was thinking. Sue joined him and gave him a self-made card. She had drawn the funny figures of her mother and father to make them laugh and to thank them. He hoped to see the island at about 5 p.m. Then they went below to get a short nap. After 6 p.m., Jonathan and Sue woke him up to give the happy news. The island of Amsterdam was in sight. The next morning, they were received by all 28 workers on the island. That was the end of the chapter. Now, there are some questions, value-based questions. You will write the answer of these questions, and you will before you do that, you will read the chapter from the textbook, and you will make notes in your fair notebooks. I hope you like it. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.